The orange sun beats down over a dry, barren plain. A gust of wind stirs the dry grass, deep pit in the earth. At the center, Clara Hart, a woman in her mid-20s, is buried up to her neck in dirt, her face streaked with sweat and her lips cracked from thirst. She looks exhausted, desperate and wide-eyed, fighting not to cry as the harsh sun beats down on her. A small crowd of townsfolk stands in silence, their faces cold and unmoving. Sheriff Briggs, a man in his 50s with a stern expression and clean boots, steps forward, eyeing Clara like she's nothing more than an object. Sheriff Briggs said, "You had a husband, Clara. You chose shame." Clara swallows, her throat dry as sand. Her eyes flicker with fear, but also defiance. Clara said calmly, "I chose a mistake. I didn't choose to die." Briggs steps closer, lowering his voice to a menacing whisper. Sheriff Briggs said, "A town lives on fear, Clara. You're the lesson." He stands up straight and looks over his shoulder at the crowd. Sheriff Briggs said loudly, "Leave her. Let the sun decide." The crowd turns and begins to walk away. Clara's eyes follow them, tears welling in her eyes, but drying quickly in the heat. Clara whispers, "I'm sorry, Eli." As the last of the townsfolk disappear over a ridge, Clara is left alone, her body shaking in the unforgiving sun. Táází shouted, "Who did this?" Clara's eyes widen, her voice barely a whisper. Clara said fearfully, "The town..." Táází turns toward his children. Nali has already climbed off the wagon, standing ready. Nali said calmly, "Papa." Táází looks at her, his jaw tightening. He makes a decision. Táází commands her with care, "Bring the water." "Now," Clara said politely. "Thank you." Nali nods, her face filled with quiet resolve. Nali said softly, "Don't talk. Save it." Tobin, his eyes filled with angry tears, watches from a distance. Tobin asked with confusion in his eyes, "Why would they bury her?" Táází doesn't let anger or hate seep into his voice. Táází responded calmly, "Because some people think pain makes them strong." Clara trembles as Táází continues to dig, his movements fast but careful. Finally, he clears the last of the dirt from her shoulders, lifts her gently, and wraps her in a blanket. Táází said decisively, "We go. Now." Clara looks behind them, her eyes searching for any signs of pursuit. Clara said quietly, "You don't know me." Táází responded calmly, "I know you were left to die." Clara swallows, her voice shaky, and continued, "They said I betrayed my husband." Táází's face is unreadable, but his voice is steady, and then said, "That is between you and him, not a crowd, not a shovel." Clara's voice falters. Clara explained softly, with pains in her voice, "He's dead. Eli. Fever last winter." Táází looks at her, surprised by the softness in her voice, and said, "I was married once." Clara turned slightly, meeting his gaze. Táází continued, "My wife died giving us Mara. Grief makes holes in people. Some fall in, some climb out, but it always leaves dirt on your hands." Clara looks down, tears finally slipping down her face, but this time they feel like relief. Táází helps Clara down from the horse, and she nearly collapses. Nali catches her arm, her eyes full of concern. Nali said gently, "Easy." Inside, the house is warm and comforting, not fancy, but filled with love. Táází sets Clara down on a bed with thick quilts. Clara looks up at him, her eyes filled with confusion. Clara asks softly, "Why would you do this?" Táází stares at the floor for a moment, then meets her gaze with truth in his eyes, and said, "Because my children are watching, and I want them to know what a good man does when he sees a person in the ground." Nali watches him, pride in her eyes, though she tries to hide it. Táází steps outside, leaving Clara with his children. Tobin said softly, "Soup." Clara takes the bowl from him, her hands shaking. Clara said softly, "Thank you, Tobin." Tobin blinks, surprised that she knows his name. Tobin asked with an edge of suspicion, "Did you really do it?" Clara's eyes fill with pain, but she doesn't look away. Clara responded quietly, "Yes." Tobin's face hardens, and Clara can see the hurt in his eyes. Tobin said with grief-stricken, "My mama died. Papa cries when he thinks we don't see. If you hurt someone like that." Clara's heart breaks as she reaches out slowly, touching his arm. Clara said softly, trembling, "I hurt someone. And then death took him before I could fix it." Tobin looks down at his hands, unsure of what to say. Tobin asks softly, "Are you bad?" Clara chokes back a sob. Clara responded gently, but firmly, "I did a bad thing, but I don't want to be a bad person." Tobin watches her for a long moment, then pushes the bowl closer. Tobin said quietly, "Don't waste the soup." Clara lets out a small, broken laugh before breaking into tears. The sound of hooves reaches their ears. 3 riders approaches, Sheriff Briggs and 2 deputies. Clara freezes, panic rising in her chest. Táází doesn't flinch. He stops chopping and places himself between the riders and the door, blocking the entrance. His face is stone. Sheriff Briggs said with a mocking tone, "Morning." He glances at Clara. Sheriff Briggs said coldly, "We're here for the woman." Táází remains calm, his voice low but firm, and responded calmly, "She is not yours." Briggs smirks, clearly not backing down. Sheriff Briggs said with threatening voice, "She belongs to the law." Táází doesn't raise his voice, but his presence speaks volumes, and responded calmly, "You buried her." "That is not law." The deputies shift nervously, their hands hovering near their holsters. Nali steps forward from behind Táází, her rifle steady in her hands, her expression calm. Briggs notices his smile fading. He sneers. Sheriff Briggs said mockingly, "You teaching children to aim at men." Táází answered simply, "I teach them not to kneel for bullies." Briggs's smile falters. There's a moment of silence, thick with tension. Sheriff Briggs said menacingly, "Hand her over, or we make trouble." Táází looks at his children, then the wide-open land. His voice remained steady, and said, "If you take her, my children learn that cruelty wins. If you leave, they learn men can walk away from evil." Briggs looks at Nali's rifle again, then back at Táází, unsure of what to do. Finally, his face twists in frustration, and he spits in the dirt. Sheriff Briggs said defeatedly, "This ain't over." The riders turn and leave. Clara said softly, but determined, "They'll come with more men." Táází nods, his face unreadable but steady, and said calmly, "Then we make the truth louder than them." Clara swallows, her mind racing. Clara asked, while sounding uncertain, "What truth?" Táází points to the paper, his finger gentle but firm, and said quietly, "Write what happened. Not just your sin, their crime." Clara nods, and she begins to write, each word feeling like a weight she must lift. "My name is Clara Hart. I was buried alive by Sheriff Briggs and his men. They said it was for infidelity. I did wrong. I confess that. But no man has the right to kill me slowly for it." A tear falls onto the page, but Clara wipes it away and keeps writing. "I am not asking to be called good. I am asking to be allowed to live long enough to change." Táází nods once, approving, and said decisively, "We take this to the circuit judge in Red Creek. Tonight." Nali overhears and looks up at Táází and said, "That's 2 days' riding." Táází looks at her, his expression steady, and said, "Then we ride hard." Mara asked Clara softly, "Are you going to leave?" Clara's heart tightens. She hugs Mara, her heart breaking. Clara answered softly, "I don't want to." Mara nods, as if she understands too much for her young age. Mara whispered, "Mama left." She didn't want to. Clara hugs her tighter, whispering apologies. Suddenly a twig snaps. Táází lifts a hand, signaling stop. 3 shadows step out of the trees, Briggs and his men. They approach slowly, like vultures. Sheriff Briggs taunting them and said, "I thought you'd run to a judge." Táází steps forward, placing himself between the riders and the wagon. His face is calm, resolute, and said quietly but firmly, "Let the children go." Briggs laughs, his voice dripping with malice, and said, "Nah." Witnesses crow up. Clara's breath catches in her throat. Nali steps forward, rifle raised, ready. Nali said sharply, "Don't." Briggs aims at Táází. Clara steps forward, holding the letter high, her voice strong despite her fear. She said it loud and clear, unwavering. "You want me? Fine, but you'll have to kill me in front of your men while I hold my confession, and when they sober up, they'll remember." One of the deputies steps forward, squinting at the paper, and said, "Sheriff, that's evidence." Briggs's face twitches. He doesn't want a fight. He wants control. Táází said quietly and unyielding, "You buried her to make people silent. Now she is speaking, and your men are listening." Briggs glances at the paper, then at Nali's rifle. He spits in the dirt, his control slipping away. Sheriff Briggs said while gritting his teeth, "This ain't over." The men turn and leave, feeling defeated. Finally at the courthouse, Clara stands tall, the weight of her confession in her hands. The clerk steps out, his eyes softening when he sees her face. Clerk, staring at Clara, concerned mom. "What happened to you?" Clara holds out the letter, her eyes fierce and unyielding. Clara said firmly, "I was buried alive." The clerk's face changes. He steps aside, motioning for her to enter. Clara said quietly, "The judge believed me." Táází nods, his gaze still on the fire. Clara said softly, with hope, "They'll come for Briggs." Táází's eyes stay fixed on the flames. Táází said gently, "Maybe, maybe not. But the town heard your voice. That matters." Clara sits across from him, silent for a moment. Clara said softly, "I don't know what I am now." Táází looks at her, steady and unwavering, and said simply, "Alive!" Clara's eyes fill with tears. But they're different now. Tears of hope, of gratitude, Clara whispered, but sounded broken. "I don't deserve what you did." Táází answers simply, truthfully, and deserve is a small word. "My children needed to see mercy. So did you." The children gather close. Mara climbs into Clara's lap, and Clara wraps her arms around her, instinctively. Tobin leans in beside her. Nali watches, then sits down too, close enough to share the warmth. Clara whispers, shaking, and said quietly, "If I stay, I'll work, I'll help, I'll try every day." Táází studies her face, looking for lies. He finds only fear and effort. He nods once and said steadily, "Then you stay." Clara breaks down, not into collapse, but into quiet relief. Her tears fall onto Mara's hair as the fire crackles. "And this the family made of loss, mistakes, and the choice to begin again," she said, soft but strong. "They buried me to erase me, but a man with 3 children chose to dig me out. Not because I was perfect, but because I was human." Táází murmured, "Some people bury you, others dig."